Professor, thank you for being here today, and please introduce a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Paul Consalvi. I'm professor at the Graduate School of Frontier Sciences on the University of Tokyo Kashiwa campus.
Okay, it's great to be here. Yeah, let's start with the basic. So, Professor, everyone talks about critical thinking, but it often feels like an overused buzzword. In plain English, what exactly is critical thinking and what does it look like in action?
Okay, interesting question. Okay, so thinking about your thinking is one way of considering critical thinking, but with a little added twist of thinking about your thinking in order to improve your thinking. So if you have some trigger in your mind when why did I think that, or does that make sense? So I'm thinking about something, my thoughts, and I'm asking myself, does that make sense to me? And I might come up with a way to improve what I'm thinking, right?
I see. Sure. Yes, this one. People often hear critical and think it means being negative or finding faults with everything. So is that what critical thinking is?
Sadly, that is the prevailing use of critical thinking, or people who learn critical thinking superficially, at a superficial level. You can get very good at being negative, and the way critical thinking is taught using logical fallacies is one reason that happens. And what I mean by that is there are various Latin words for logical fallacies, like ad hominem, which means at the man in Latin, but this is a fallacy if, for example, if you ask me a question and I attack you for asking me such a terrible question, I'm attacking not your idea or the question, the issue, but I'm attacking you, the person. And so that's called ad hominem. And being able to identify all of these illogical fallacies doesn't improve my thinking. It just points out when something is not logical, for example. So that's where this idea of the meaning of critical meaning negative, and Japanese also translate the word critical as a criticism. So this is unfortunately a misconception of what critical thinking can be. Yes.
Shukriya. So next question. We make hundreds of automatic decisions every day. And what separates everyday default thinking from true critical thinking?
Yes. So consciously thinking about your thinking. So if you're walking, you're not thinking every step I take, where should I put my foot? But if you're using critical thinking, you could actually use the idea of a switch. and say, okay, I'm going to use critical thinking on this issue or this concern I have. So by consciously even saying, all right, now I'm going to try to apply critical thinking, that surfaces critical thinking. So some people might be naturally good critical thinkers, but for most of us, it's good to step back and say, this is an important issue. I should try to use critical thinking.
Okay, some people have good critical thinking already, but mostly don't. Okay, then.
Well, I'm not a big fan of saying, trying to evaluate people and say they have good critical thinking or bad critical thinking. It's mostly about effort. So how much are they willing to try to use critical thinking, and how good is their effort?
So we can develop our thinking
by reflecting on what we think and express. So obviously critical thinking is in your head. We think in our head, and then sometimes when we try to communicate verbally, it doesn't come out the same as we think. Right?
Okay. Next question. In an era of information overload and AI tools, which is critical thinking more urgent today than ever? So especially for graduate students, why is critical thinking more urgent than ever?
I don't know that it's more urgent. I think we didn't take it seriously enough for many years, and we had some superficial thoughts, superficial ideas about what critical thinking is, and therefore for example, my own country, the United States, there seems to be an absence of critical thinking in the media, in everyday conversation. So we think we are good critical thinkers, but there's no evidence for it. If you watch the media, you can't see critical thinking being practiced even by those who we think should be able to do it, like politicians and newscasters. So they are not even trying to embody the basic concepts of critical thinking.
Okay, next question. So previous question I asked about, so critical thinking can be developed, and so if critical thinking requires deliberate structure, why do we need a special framework like models, all other models, or instead of just trying harder to think well?
I see. So, well, maybe some people don't need to rely on models. I, in my own experience, before critical thinking, before I started to be conscious about learning critical thinking, I would have I did assume that I was a good critical thinker because I graduated from a good university and got an advanced degree, and I would have thought without any evidence that I was a good critical thinker. But when I found some studies which showed that when asked, when you ask people, are they above average critical thinker, and they believe they are, and when they're asked, okay, well, what is critical thinking? What is critical thinking? They can't explain what they do better than the average. So that's what got me interested in critical thinking. I was the same. I believed, without any evidence, I was a better than average critical thinker. And when confronted with that question, I realized I had no idea what critical thinking was. So I started learning models, especially the Paul and Elder model, because that is maybe the most accessible, and they use basically plain language to explain things. So I really jumped onto this one model in the beginning.